Oh my gosh, let me just say, there's nothing like sitting still and listening to somebody do your bio. Glad that doesn't happen every day. Or maybe it should. No, wait, just kidding. As I get my technology squared away, you know, Reverend Alexander was here last week, and he used his iPad, and I thought, girl, you have got to get with the times here. So, but I have my paper backup just in case, because you never know, So many thanks to Nick for that song, because I had no idea what he was going to sing. Of course I did this time because he sang the same song in the first service. But when he sang it in the first service, I was totally surprised, and I love it. It's one of my very favorite songs, and I love the way you do it. And it was awesome to get up and boogie with you while doing it, yes. And many thanks to our amazing band and all that goes with it. I won't dwell on that too much because it'll get mushy, but yes, thank you. Thank you, honey. Thank you. Yeah. So a couple of months ago, Reverend David Alt came up to me, and he spoke some words to me about the council. He said, I want to talk to you a little bit after the service, so don't run off. I want to chat with you. And I thought, oh, okay, he wants some advice from me. He wants my opinion, because aren't we all attached to our opinion, right? That's the most important thing, is my opinion, right? So I thought, okay, he wants to ask me about my opinion, talk to me about, run some ideas by me, see what I think. Okay, I can do that. And then when he stopped me afterwards and said, I want you to consider being a potential council member, I was like, wait, who is he talking to? What, are you talking to me? I was very surprised and very honored and very excited by the whole thing, because I am really excited about, first of all, his courage to put out there the idea of doing SLCA 2.0. And for any of you who don't know what the heck we're talking about, when we say that, I invite you to talk with a board member or talk to David after the service and ask a little more about that, because we're very excited about it. We're looking at some different ways to do church, and it's just really thrilling to be on the sidelines and watch, and to be involved with it as well. So as we're looking at that 2.0 model, we have some things to step up to, right? We're being called into greater forms of leadership as individuals. The groups within the church, the board, the leadership groups, the various smaller groups within the church are being called to show up in different ways. And as a community, we are looking at showing up in different ways and expanding, stepping outside of our regular church box, as it were. And so that can be a very exciting thing, and it can be a somewhat terrifying. Did I hear the word terrifying? Terrifying works. Yeah, it can be a little terrifying at times, because we always have to, whenever we step up like that, we have to look at, what do I have to release in order to be available to that? And what do I have to step into? What greater self do I need to step into to be available to that? So I wanted to share with you a little writing from Dr. Holmes from the Big Science of Mind book. And so he has some good advice for us. On page 499, he refers to a verse in James chapter 1 that reads, "Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves." Ernest goes on to write, "This should teach us not to make idle talk about our understanding. What we know, we can do. What we cannot do, we only suppose. We only think we know. Unused knowledge is suppositional and unreal. It is an assumption, and as such, never produced anything. Not everyone who says, 'Lord, Lord,' but those who do the will of truth enter in." He goes on to say, but we deceive ourselves when we boast about our understanding and are unable to provide that we possess any of that understanding. A silent conviction is worth more than the loudest proclamation from the housetops of those who shout affirmations to the great nowhere. An ounce of conviction is worth many pounds of affirmation. Pure religion manifests itself through acts of kindness and mercy. It is not arrogant, claiming a front seat in heaven, but is humble before the great whole. It unifies with all humanity and finds no great difference between saint and sinner. Such a religion as this the world of today needs, for it is sick of pretense and would like a practical demonstration of a belief in God, made manifest through good works. So there's some words there. There's some words from Dr. Holmes. He's calling us to show up and not just talk about what we believe, but be more of what we believe and act from those convictions. So when we consider that, when we consider how to go about doing that, there's lots of different ways to go about doing that. There's lots of different ways to show up in the world. Our topic for the month of August is love, compassion, and caring. And our topic for today is compassion itself, being compassion. A few years ago, I came across a story that I found to be an incredibly powerful piece of work. It just really moved me. I think it was a story. It could have been a joke on a TED Talk. I'm not sure. Okay? I'm not sure. Just one morning, it was in my consciousness, so I know it made an impact on me. The story goes like this. There's a scholar. The scholar is standing before two doors. On door number 1, there's a sign that says, "Lecture about God." And on door number 2, there's a sign that says, "God." In the story, the scholar makes a beeline for door number 1. Okay? Now, I use this story in various ways. Sometimes I use this story in a classroom setting, and we all talk about where do we go, which door do we go through, knowing that either door is okay. The point of this story is not that one door is better than the other, or that scholars are better than anyone else or less than anyone else. Because we can interchange many different things on these doors and still have a lot of potential for growth. So let's try that. Let's talk about a spiritual seeker standing before two doors. On door number 1, there's a workshop about happiness. And on door number 2, there's a sign that says happiness. Which door does the spiritual seeker head for? How many of us have gone through that door so many times? When is the next class? When is the next workshop? When is the next book from Hay House? Hi, I'm Annette, and I have a Hay House addiction. Okay? All right, I've admitted it. So we're reading about, we're learning about, we're listening to, we're talking about happiness. And then there's happiness. Or we're learning about peace. And then there's peace. There's a class about prosperity, and then there's prosperity. Okay? There's a little bit of a difference here. So let's look at that a little more closely, because what we want to talk about today is compassion. An activist stands before two doors, and on door number 1, there's a lecture about compassion, which the paradox is I'm giving a lecture about compassion, okay? That's the paradox. There's always a paradox when you stand at this podium, okay? So there's a lecture about compassion, and then there's compassion. There's compassion. Even when we look at being compassionate towards someone, let's look at that for a moment. Because if I'm compassionate toward you, you who I feel need my compassion. Okay? There's a little bit of separation there. There's a veil of otherness. I'm being compassionate toward someone who is other than me. And yet we're called to compassion. So I want to talk a little bit about bridging those two doors. Again, there's nothing wrong with either door. I want us to find the connection between the two. There's a difference between thinking about compassion and being compassionate and actually being compassion itself. So I want to invite us to do a little exercise. Be a little game with me here, and let's try this little exercise. For the next few moments, I want you to feel your bottom in the chair. I hear the chuckles because some of you think, oh, this is easy. And some of you think, oh, no, I know this is not going to be easy. All right, feel your bottom in the chair. Feel your bottom in the chair. Breathe into feeling your bottom in the chair. If you happen to be standing in the back, leaning against the wall, feel your back against the wall. Notice the difference between thinking about your bottom in the chair and actually feeling it. Because a lot of what's going on out there as you're sitting in your chair is you're thinking about your bottom in the chair. You're thinking thoughts like, this chair is hot, this chair is cool, this chair is hard, or this chair is softer than I thought it was. You're thinking about the feeling of your bottom in the chair. I want you to notice the difference. Now, don't try to make your mind shut up. It's okay. Just notice it. Notice that feeling your bottom in the chair is not the same as thinking about your bottom in the chair. Just like thinking about peace or compassion is not the same as actual peace and actual compassion. Now, if you're struggling with keeping your mind on your bottom and the actual feeling of it, that's okay, because that happens to all of us. That's normal. And that's what I want to point out to you. Initially, before I asked you to notice that the difference between your thoughts and the feelings, you thought you were feeling your bottom in the chair when all you were doing was thinking about your bottom in the chair. I know, because I sat in that chair. I got a bottom too. I got more bottom than some of you, okay? So, the great thing about this exercise is that we can take it with us wherever we go. We can become more present by noticing our bottom in the front seat of the car. We can become more present by noticing our stance in the grocery line. And when we do that, what happens is a very beautiful thing. When we notice the difference between thinking about our bottom in the chair and actually feeling it, we create a little gap of stillness. We create a little doorway that some pretty special things can come through. And so, Ernest is going to tell us a little bit about that for just a moment. So, again, from the Science of Mind book, pages 343 and 344, Ernest writes, the great mystics like Jesus have taught that as we enter into the one enters into us and becomes us and is us. They have taught the mystical marriage, the union of the soul of man with the soul of God and the unity of all life. Now, a little sidebar, compassion is an attribute of that unity that Dr. Holmes is talking about. When we enter door number 2, it naturally flows as who we are. That compassion is who you are. It's a natural aspect of the natural state of you-ness. I don't have to figure out how to help the other because I am one with the other. And that compassion feeds my information. I'm less likely to create unintended consequences when I serve from that particular place of unity. If I'm serving other is better than not serving at all, but if I'm serving other, I am more likely to initiate unintended consequences. And if I had more time, let me tell you, there's some interesting stories of unintended consequences out there. Just Google the phrase, okay? So if I come to that place of not thinking about compassion, but letting that come through that doorway. Ernest continues. He writes, the highest mental practice is to listen to this inner voice and to declare its presence. The greater a man's consciousness of this indwelling I am, the more fully he will live. This will never lead to illusion, but will always lead to reality. All great souls have known this and have constantly striven to let the mind of God express through their mentalities. That Father that dwelleth within me, he doeth the work. This was the declaration of the great master, and so it should be ours also. So go back to feeling your bottom in the chair. Notice that the voice in your head that is saying, that chair is hard, the chair is cold. It's not the inner voice that Ernest Holmes is talking about. The inner voice he's referring to is that still voice that comes through when you turn from those thoughts and feel your bottom in the chair. Penny Pierce is an author who writes about intuition and teaches about presence and energy, and she has a wonderful definition of compassion that I really like. She says, compassion is a pervasive understanding that knows love as the core of every being and every situation. It is the virtue that gives rise to one's desire to alleviate another's suffering. That form of compassion comes through that gap when we make the bridge from door number 1 to door number 2. Feeling loving kindness or compassion, and some people have a little struggle with compassion. Sometimes we need the stepping stone of loving kindness to get to compassion, and that's absolutely fine. So let's try one little more expanded version of this before we're done today. Go back to feeling your bottom in the chair. And let your consciousness begin to rise up to your heart space. Let your attention travel from your bottom up to that heart space and begin to feel it expand. Begin to feel loving kindness or compassion, and we can use our thoughts to activate that feeling and that energy. We can do that by thinking of someone we love, someone that it's easy to feel loving kindness or compassion toward. And we can begin to shift into being that compassion through this heart space, knowing that it begins to shift and change the energy in the room we're in. And I have felt that shift standing here in front of you right now. The whole energy in the room shifted when you began to bring your consciousness up to that heart space. Feeling that space open, not just thinking about that space opening. Breathing into that space, we let that greater presence within be the source of our action. When we do that, appropriate action becomes obvious and clear. and any unintended consequences that may naturally occur or that may arise will naturally arc toward being beneficial for everyone involved. That's part of the depth of what we activate when we open this door and let that higher presence in through our beingness. And so as we continue to explore leadership and growing and serving and being active in this community and to the greater community, I invite us all to continue to practice being that compassion that we want to see in the world and being that presence that we all know is there. As we look at ourselves in the mirror and as we look in each other's faces, knowing that we are mirrored there. And so that is my prayer, and that is my treatment for all of us today. And so it is.
Hi, I'm David Alt, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.